I am a 34-year-old architect from Portland. My life used to be exactly what I wanted. Beautiful home that I designed myself. A marriage of 5 years to my high school sweetheart Amanda that I thought was rock solid. But everything changed 6 months ago. My brother Jackson has always been the problem child. The one who makes bad decisions. The one my mother always protects. I never imagined he would betray me in the worst possible way. And I never thought my own mother would help him hide it. If you want to hear how I exposed the ultimate family betrayal and reclaimed my dignity, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe. Trust me, this story has an ending you will not believe. My career as an architect was everything I dreamed about since I was 12 years old, sketching buildings in my notebook while other kids played video games. By 34, I had secured a position at Collins and Wentworth, one of the most prestigious firms in the Northwest. The job was demanding. 70-hour weeks were normal, especially when deadlines loomed. But I never complained, because every hour I spent hunched over blueprints or meeting with clients was another brick in the foundation of the life I was building with Amanda. We had been together since junior year of high school. She was the art student with paint perpetually stuck under her fingernails, and I was the nerdy kid who could talk for hours about structural integrity and sustainable materials. Somehow we just fit. After college, when I proposed on a cliffside overlooking the Pacific, she cried and said she had been waiting for this moment her entire life. Our wedding was small but perfect. We bought a fixer-upper that I spent 2 years transforming into our dream home. By all accounts, we were living the American dream. Amanda had started a small graphic design business, working from our home office while I climbed the corporate ladder. We had plans for children in the next year or two. Everything was falling into place, exactly as we had imagined. Then there was my brother Jackson, 3 years younger than me, and perpetually in some kind of trouble. While I was the straight-A student who never gave our parents a moment of worry, Jackson was the opposite. Drugs in high school, dropped out of 3 different colleges, a string of failed jobs and relationships. Our father, before he passed away 5 years ago, was tough on Jackson, tried to instill some responsibility in him. But our mother always made excuses. It was always the same pattern. Jackson would mess up. Dad would try to implement consequences. Mom would intervene. Jackson would promise to do better. Nothing would change. After Dad died from a sudden heart attack, the responsibility of being the family stabilizer fell to me. Mom would call whenever Jackson needed money for rent, or to get his car fixed, or to pay off some debt. And I always stepped up despite the growing resentment I felt. Amanda used to encourage my generosity toward my brother. She said it showed what a good person I was. Now I wonder if she was just setting me up to be the fool. The first signs that something was wrong in my marriage appeared about 8 months ago. Amanda became distant. Conversations that once flowed easily became strained. She started keeping her phone face down and would take calls in another room. There were unexplained absences, shopping trips that took hours longer than they should have, girls' nights that she came home from smelling like cologne. I noticed changes in her appearance too. New clothes, different hairstyle, more makeup. At the time, I told myself she was just trying to freshen things up, making an effort. I should have recognized the signs. Our 5th anniversary dinner at Riverside, the upscale restaurant where we had celebrated every major milestone, was when I knew something was seriously wrong. Amanda barely touched her food. She kept checking her phone. When I tried to reminisce about our early days together, she seemed completely checked out. I reached for her hand across the table and she flinched. That flinch cut deeper than she could have known. 2 weeks later, I had a conference in Chicago. A major architecture symposium that normally I would have been thrilled about. But I felt uneasy leaving. Something in my gut told me things at home were not right. Amanda drove me to the airport and barely got out of the car to say goodbye. Just a quick peck on the cheek and she was eager to leave. During my time in Chicago, I called home multiple times. Each call felt more distant than the last. Amanda always had a reason why she could not talk long. She was busy with a client project. She was about to meet friends for dinner. She was tired and going to bed early. By the third day of the conference, I could not focus on any of the presentations. I made a split-second decision to return home early. I did not tell Amanda. I wanted to surprise her, maybe rekindle some of the spontaneity we seemed to have lost. I caught a red-eye flight and took a taxi from the airport at 7 a.m., excited to see the look on her face when I walked through the door. But our house was empty. Her car was gone from the garage. At 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. Where could she possibly be? I called her cell phone. No answer. I texted. Nothing. I told myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe she had an early client meeting. Maybe she went for breakfast with a friend. While waiting for her to return, I unpacked my suitcase. That is when I found it. A gray t-shirt stuffed partially under our bed. Not mine. Men's size large, with a faded band logo. My heart started racing. I am not typically a jealous person. I had always trusted Amanda completely. But this was impossible to ignore. When she finally came home, around 10 a.m., she froze in the doorway when she saw me. The look on her face was not happiness to see her husband home early. It was panic. I held up the shirt, asked whose it was. She claimed it belonged to a friend of hers who had stopped by to help move some furniture while I was gone. The explanation seemed reasonable, but something in her delivery felt rehearsed. And why would moving furniture require taking off a shirt? Over the next few weeks, I noticed Amanda had gained a little weight. Not much, just enough that her clothes fit differently. I thought nothing of it. We all fluctuate. And if I am being honest, the possibility of pregnancy never crossed my mind because we had been using protection and she was on birth control. At least that is what she had told me. One evening, I overheard Amanda on the phone in our bathroom. The door was not completely closed and her voice carried. I caught snippets. This is crazy. We need to be more careful. No one can know yet. When I asked her who she was talking to, she said it was her mother discussing a surprise party for her father's birthday. Another lie in what I would soon discover was a tangled web of deception. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon. I came home early from work with a pounding headache. While searching the medicine cabinet for aspirin, I knocked over a small bottle. Prenatal vitamins, with Amanda's name on the prescription. My headache was instantly forgotten as I stared at the bottle in disbelief. When Amanda came home, I confronted her immediately. "Are you pregnant?" I asked, holding up the vitamin bottle. She burst into tears, nodding. For a brief, beautiful moment, joy overwhelmed me. We were going to have a baby. I grabbed her in a hug, lifting her off the ground already, imagining nursery colors and tiny shoes. But then I felt her stiffen in my arms. She pulled away, eyes averted. Something was wrong. I asked when she had found out why she had kept it from me. She mumbled about being scared, about knowing how focused I was on my career, about waiting for the right time to tell me. The explanation made sense, but her body language did not match her words. She seemed guilty, not relieved, to finally share the news. Still, I pushed aside my doubts. We were having a baby. I called my mother immediately to share the news. Her reaction was odd. Instead of the excitement I expected, she sounded tense. Asked how far along Amanda was. Wanted to know if we had told anyone else. Suggested we keep it private for now. At the time, I attributed her strange reaction to old-fashioned notions about announcing pregnancies in the first trimester. My mother invited us for dinner that weekend. She said she wanted to celebrate the good news, just the family. When she mentioned Jackson would be there too, I felt a twinge of annoyance. My brother had been particularly absent lately, not even returning my calls about a leak in his apartment that I had promised to help fix. The dinner was uncomfortable from the start. Jackson arrived late as usual. When he walked in and saw Amanda, something passed between them. A look I could not quite interpret. Throughout the meal, I noticed strange glances exchanged. My mother kept steering the conversation away from the pregnancy, making odd comments about how some family matters should stay private. When I asked Jackson about his new job that he had mentioned in a text weeks ago, he became flustered, said it had not worked out, changed the subject. Amanda barely touched her food and excused herself early, claiming morning sickness even though it was evening. I offered to take her home, but she insisted I stay and visit with my family. She would take an Uber. After she left, the atmosphere remained strained. Mom kept asking about my work schedule, whether I was still pulling long hours. Jackson barely spoke, continuously checking his phone. I left shortly after, confused by the entire interaction. The next morning, I was using our shared family iPad to check email when a notification appeared. A text message from Jackson to Amanda. The message preview showed just enough "miss you already. Cannot wait to feel our baby kick again like last night." The room tilted. Blood rushed in my ears. I opened the message thread and saw months of exchanges between my brother and my wife. Intimate details, plans for secret meetings, discussions about the baby. Their baby. I staggered to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. Then I sat on the cold tile floor, reading through message after message, each one another dagger in my heart. The affair had been going on for nearly a year. Started when Jackson came to stay with us for 2 weeks after being evicted from his apartment. Continued right under my nose while I worked late nights to provide for our future. I drove to my mother's house, barely registering the journey. Tears blurred my vision as I confronted her. She did not even try to deny it. She knew, had known for months about the affair and the pregnancy. When I asked how she could keep this from me, her response shattered what remained of my heart. "Jackson needs stability in his life," she said. "This baby might be what finally helps him grow up and take responsibility. I have never seen him so committed to anything before." "What about me?" I asked. "What about your other son? The one who has always done everything right. You have always been the strong one," she replied. "You will get through this and find someone else. Jackson might never have another chance at happiness." I left my childhood home, knowing I had lost not just my wife and unborn child, but my mother as well. When I returned home, Amanda was waiting. She did not deny anything, said she had not planned for it to happen, that she and Jackson had connected in a way she and I never had, that she had tried to end it multiple times but could not stay away from him. I asked her to leave, to go to Jackson or my mother or wherever she wanted, but to get out of the home I had built with my own 2 hands, believing it would hold our family. She packed a bag and left without argument. The next 6 weeks were the darkest of my life. I moved into a hotel, unable to face the empty house filled with memories. I missed work deadlines, stopped returning calls from friends, lost 15 pounds because eating seemed pointless. My appearance deteriorated. Unshaven, unwashed, wearing the same clothes for days. I stopped caring about anything. In my darkest moments, I questioned whether life was even worth continuing. What was the point? Everything I had worked for, everyone I had trusted, it was all a lie. Friends tried to reach me. Coworkers dropped by the hotel. I turned them all away. The betrayal was too raw, too all-encompassing to let anyone else in. On a rainy Sunday morning, there was a knock at my hotel door. I ignored it at first, thinking it was housekeeping. The knocking continued, more insistent. When I finally opened the door, I found Amanda, Jackson, and my mother standing in the hallway. The audacity of them showing up together nearly knocked the wind from me. They asked to come in. Like a sleepwalker, I stepped aside. They took seats around the small table in my room while I remained standing. Jackson spoke first. He had been arrested the previous night. DUI and possession charges. Not his first offense. He was looking at serious jail time unless he could afford a top-tier lawyer. I stared at him, uncomprehending. Was he actually asking me for money? After everything? Then, Amanda placed her hand on her now visibly pregnant belly. "The baby deserves a stable home," she said. "Jackson might be going away for a while. It would be best for everyone if you would agree to raise the baby as your own." My mother nodded along. "For family harmony," she added. "The child is innocent in all this, and it would still be your brother's child, your family." I stood there listening to them outline their plan. I would claim the baby as mine on the birth certificate, pay for Jackson's legal defense, welcome Amanda back home, pretend none of this ever happened. Their justifications tumbled out. The baby needs stability. Jackson would still be involved, but from a distance. It would save everyone from scandal and gossip. In that moment, something crystallized within me. A lifetime of being the responsible one. The one who fixed everything. The one who sacrificed. The one who was taken advantage of again and again because I would never say no to family. I saw with perfect clarity how they viewed me. Not as a person with feelings and dreams of my own, but as a resource to be used. A safety net. A blank check. I told them I needed time to think. Asked them to leave. My calm demeanor must have given them hope because they left looking relieved. My mother squeezed my arm on the way out. "You have always done the right thing," she said. "I know you will now too." The moment the door closed behind them, I began to move with purpose for the first time in weeks. I showered, shaved, put on clean clothes, called my office, and scheduled a week of vacation time. Then I made the most important call. To Diana Hoffman, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. 2 days later, I sat in her sleek downtown office laying out my situation. She listened without judgment, taking detailed notes. When I finished, she looked up at me with steel in her eyes. "This is one of the clearest cases of alienation of affection I have ever heard," she said. "With the evidence you already have, we can go after both your wife and your brother for emotional distress. The infidelity is well documented. The paternity is acknowledged." She outlined a strategy that would not only ensure I walked away without paying Amanda a dime, but potentially with compensation for the emotional damage inflicted. But there was more. Diana recommended I hire a private investigator to document the ongoing relationship between Amanda and Jackson, to look into their finances, to see if there was any evidence of them planning this betrayal. Over the next 3 weeks, the investigator uncovered more than I could have imagined. Not only had the affair been going on longer than I thought, but Amanda and Jackson had been siphoning money from our joint account into a separate one, only in her name, nearly $30,000 over the past year. Money I thought was going toward home improvements and her business expenses. The investigator also found evidence that my mother had helped them hide assets. She had transferred the title of a small rental property my father had left to both Jackson and me solely into Jackson's name, forging my signature on the documents. Even more disturbing, the investigator uncovered previous legal issues my brother had faced that I knew nothing about. A sexual harassment settlement from a former employer, a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend. Cases my mother had paid to keep quiet and hidden from me, even as she asked me to give Jackson money and support. Armed with this information, I began to prepare methodically. I met with a financial advisor to protect what assets remained. I documented years of financial support I had provided to Jackson, creating a detailed accounting of every loan never repaid, every bill I had covered. I reached out to friends I had been neglecting, rebuilding my support network. And perhaps most importantly, I began seeing a therapist to process the trauma and prepare emotionally for what would come next. My plan came together like the architectural designs I crafted at work, each element supporting the others, each detail considered and accounted for. This would be no emotional outburst or vindictive attack. This would be a calculated strategic dismantling of the fiction they had created. 3 weeks later, I invited Amanda Jackson and my mother to dinner at a private room in an upscale restaurant. I told them I was ready to discuss their proposal, that I had been thinking about family and responsibility. They arrived looking nervous but hopeful. Little did they know, I had already set everything in motion. The restaurant was elegant with soft lighting and well-spaced tables ensuring privacy. I had arrived early and set up a small recording device under the table. Oregon, being a one-party consent state for recordings, meant this was completely legal. I ordered expensive wine for the table, though I stuck with water. I needed a clear head. As appetizers were served, I asked them to walk me through the plan again. They eagerly obliged. Amanda explained how we would tell everyone the baby was mine. Jackson outlined how, with my financial help for his legal defense, he could avoid jail time and still be in the child's life. My mother added that she would tell friends and family how thrilled she was that Amanda and I had worked through our rough patch. Their relief at my apparent acquiescence was palpable. They smiled, toasted to new beginnings and family unity. My mother reached across the table to squeeze my hand, tears in her eyes, as she thanked me for being so understanding. When the main course arrived, I slowly removed a folder from my briefcase. Inside was everything: the text messages, the financial records, the investigator's report, the forged property transfer, the legal documents prepared by my attorney. "I think you have misunderstood something fundamental about me," I said calmly. "All these years you have mistaken my kindness for weakness, my generosity for obligation, my loyalty for blind obedience." I slid copies of the divorce papers across the table to Amanda. "I have no intention of raising your child. I have no intention of paying for Jackson's legal problems, and I certainly have no intention of pretending none of this happened." The shock on their faces would have been satisfying if the whole situation were not so tragic. Jackson tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. I was not finished. I outlined exactly what would happen next. I had already filed for divorce on grounds of adultery with all the evidence clearly documented. I had reported the financial fraud to the authorities. The forged property transfer was being investigated as well. Jackson's previous legal issues would be brought to the attention of the prosecutor handling his current charges, likely resulting in maximum penalties. But there was one more revelation that I had saved for last. 2 days earlier, I had been offered a partnership at a rival architectural firm in Seattle. I had accepted the position and would be moving at the end of the month. I had already sold our house to an eager buyer, with the proceeds going into an account only in my name, as advised by my attorney. "I will not be available to fix your problems anymore," I told them. "You will have to face the consequences of your actions without me as your safety net." My mother began to cry. Amanda stared at her plate. Jackson tried to argue, saying I could not prove anything, that it would be his word against mine. I simply slid another document across the table: a paternity test authorization that would be required as part of the divorce proceedings. The meal ended shortly after. They left one by one, my mother last pausing at the door to say she had only wanted what was best for everyone. I did not respond. Some betrayals run too deep for words. The following months were challenging, but transformative. The divorce proceeded exactly as my attorney had predicted. With irrefutable evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct, Amanda received nothing from our marital assets. The fraud investigation resulted in Jackson facing additional charges beyond his DUI and possession case. Without my financial support for a high-priced attorney, he accepted a plea deal that included jail time. I threw myself into my new position in Seattle. The change of scenery was exactly what I needed. New city, new colleagues, new condo overlooking Puget Sound. I worked hard but set healthier boundaries. No more 70-hour weeks. I made time for therapy, for exercise, for rebuilding my sense of self outside of my role as the family fixer. I received occasional updates about the aftermath. Amanda had moved in with my mother after Jackson went to jail. The baby, a boy, was born 2 months after our divorce was finalized. Jackson served 6 months before being released on probation, only to violate it within weeks. Amanda struggled as a single mother. My mother, helping as much as her limited resources allowed. There were attempts at reconciliation. My mother called on holidays, left tearful voicemails about family and forgiveness. Amanda sent an email when the baby was born with a photo attached. I never responded. Not out of malice, but out of self-preservation. Some bridges cannot and should not be rebuilt. As months became a year, and then 2, my new life took shape. I found purpose beyond my career, mentoring young architects from disadvantaged backgrounds. I built friendships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I even began dating again, cautiously and honestly, making sure to share my story with anyone who might become important in my life. The pain and anger that once consumed me gradually faded. Not completely. Some wounds leave permanent scars. But they no longer dictated my choices or colored my view of the world. Through therapy and reflection, I came to understand that the betrayal said more about them than it ever did about me. I learned that family is defined by loyalty and respect, not by blood. that my worth is not determined by my usefulness to others, that standing up for myself is not selfish but necessary, that forgiveness is possible without allowing people to continue causing harm. Most importantly, I learned that ending toxic relationships is not giving up. Sometimes it is the bravest form of beginning again. Today, I can look in the mirror and feel at peace with the man looking back at me. I lost what I thought was my family, but I found my dignity, my self-respect, and ultimately, my freedom. Sometimes the greatest act of love is the one you finally show yourself. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members for your own well-being? What boundaries have you had to set with loved ones who betrayed your trust? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of overcoming betrayal and finding strength. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is more valuable than the one you were born into.